Didn't the other kids tell you not to come here? Go back, before it's too late!
At the heart of horror, there has always been more than spooks and scares. Sometimes, it's not what you see, but what you hear. Welcome to Sound Scary. Each week, we talk to the artists, the musicians, the fans, the people who haunt the shadowy corners of your mind. Join us as we delve into the deepest, darkest, and most unforgettable earscapes. Welcome to Sound Scary.
Welcome back to another episode of Sound Scary. I'm your host, Ryan Coltrera, and we are back from our hiatus. I'm here with my co-host, as always, James Oster.
AKA Chimio. How are you? Welcome back, man. It's been a while. It's been a long time. I'm excited to be back. And I'm really excited today because we have it's kind of a family show today. I got an old friend, someone who I've known for several years, and I actually got to be a part of an audio commentary when his film Bryan Loves You was originally released on DVD. I'm so excited to present to you guys Seth Landau, who... Damn, dude, it's been a long time.
Scary Seth, what's up? Well, and you know what? I got to say, we don't look much older than back in the day. And it's like, you said several. It's been almost 20. We met in 07.
Good
it's 2022 now.
No kidding.
Jesus.
Yeah. And that commentary was, I believe, 08. A long time ago.
Wow.
Sometimes I forget when I
Time
started
flies.
working for Arrow in the Head, and it was one of my first big things. I did not do a set visit though. I think
you did. Well, our set wasn't here in Arizona where I am now, but you came out to the soundstage with my boy Dan Newman, and I think you were one or two of the only people who sat in on the edit before it was released.
Yeah, it was fun. That was a fun experience. Now, how did this come about? Like, why we're still talking about it's getting a release this week?
Yeah. How did the re-release happen? Well, one of my old contacts from back in the day, who I originally met through Stars Anchor Bay, who released the movie the first time, we happened to be talking. I happened to mention that the rights had expired, and he said, why don't we maybe release it? And this was so it's 2022 now. It's about approximately a year ago. I had never thought about that, but he said, there's interest. I'd like to put it with our collector's edition marquee. They're the segment of the MVD Entertainment Group that this content fits within. So, and then he said, my other movie that was released through these guys, which was a comedy, what happened with that? I said, nothing. He said, let's release that too. So these older properties were both remastered to look like modern day content that are HD and can actually play on Blu-ray. Bryan on Blu-ray and streaming, the other comedy streaming for now only, but kind of on a whim through a casual conversation with an old contact. And I'm glad we had that conversation.
That's great. I'm sure as a filmmaker, that's a real feather in your cap moment.
Yeah, so what happened was shortly after Bryan came out the first time, I was bouncing around Hollywood. People liked me as a producer. So I was trying to get work kind of as that, a producer for other people. I have other scripts that I'd like to make, but I mean, after making 2 features on my own for micro budgets through money that I culled together myself, it wasn't viable. So logically, you have to get a job. And so there were several different people who I worked with for years, one of which was Tony Todd. He was going to have his directorial debut called Erie, PA, then Catalytic. I was on his development team for a year or more, going through script revisions with him and several production meetings. But things like that just didn't come to fruition. About 10 years ago, I relocated from Los Angeles to Arizona, where I am now, and then just worked in other realms. I worked in politics, doing comms for both sides, Democrats and Republicans, using my entertainment abilities in that world. I was a teacher for a year. I worked a couple of corporate marketing jobs. And so my mind wasn't on Hollywood at all. And as far as I knew, my movies were just in the past. So fast forward to about a year ago. So in 2021, having that aforementioned conversation, like I said, on a whim, just, hey, what's happening? And now I'm at a point where both of my movies that I made back in the day are looking modern on modern platforms. And I'm looking to be back in production probably next year. So let's say 2023, once I have a story and a script that I'm happy with and confident with the budget that I'm able to wrangle. So yeah, totally unexpected. So it was almost like I had a 10-year break.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Not a typical story. I'm sure you guys have not heard that one before.
Well, I mean, who's as typical, I suppose, but
True.
That's amazing. I mean, welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, and the thing is, this is what I am at my heart. I mean, you could say filmmaker, but a more basic version of that is storyteller. And so, I've had enough jobs out of the industry and out of Hollywood to know I just don't fit in most of the regular world. And I'm glad I had the experiences that I did, because I have different perspectives and I've been on the inside of different industries that I would have never had that experience in LA as a content creator. So as a writer, it helps you. As a director, it helps you. Just as a manager, which is anybody on set, as a producer, it helps you. So I love the fact that I had these experiences, but I love more the fact that I'm getting back into what I'm supposed to be doing on the planet, which is, telling good stories in a way that, educates and entertains. So.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that it's so interesting about the film, and weirdly kind of good timing, is the fact that, I've got my mask right here. So there you go.
Good man. I love the fact that you kept it. I appreciate that.
Of course I did. You're dealing with a cult. It feels a little relevant, to say the least.
Sure.
At this point, the world we're living in is kind of strange. How looking back at the film now, I mean, how do you feel about it? Like, just what is your relationship with Bryan Loves You at this point?
It's a really personal story for me. So I think it's different than a typical movie, and also than a typical horror movie, because I have colleagues and peers who crank out a lot of stuff and they're really good at it. They turn a little bit of a profit and they've got a fan base. And my thing is more like the stories that I tell are super personal, and I have to be passionate about it or I won't do it, which is why, like, to date, I only have 2 features. My relationship with it is really tight. It always will be. To your earlier point, I do think that it's way more relevant in 2022 than it was in 2008. A huge component of the story is you're living in, let's call it a surveillance state, or however you want to phrase it. You're always being watched. There are a million cameras everywhere. And back in you all probably remember this, back when that first came out, we shot this in 2006, we edited it and promoted it and sold it in 2007. It came out in 2008. So cell phones were not what they were today. Social media was barely a thing. Back then we had MySpace. Hardly anybody was on Facebook at that point. Twitter was not really, it just was different. Social media wasn't what it is now. Real-time news and happenings is just not, it wasn't then what it is today. So because of that, I feel like way more relevant today. And I'm actually really happy that it's out now. In addition to being, its first launch back then. But back to the original question, it's a personal story. A lot of the impetus for the story came from being an outsider, getting a little bit into the weeds. Parents got divorced. We relocated from New York to Arizona. I'm not very religious, but I was born into the Jewish faith. And for some reason, upon arriving in Arizona, I was ID'd and singled out as being very Jewish immediately, and often questioned about it, sometimes in a threatening way, sometimes in a fairly just innocently inquisitive type way, like they had never seen one before. Oh, wow. So I went from Long Island, which was at the time one of the highest concentrations of Jewish people, to a part of rural Arizona, which was one of the lowest. It was a big factor in writing this story, just feeling like an outsider and feeling like the people around you really need you to believe what they believe, or they might potentially harm on the extreme end of things, coerce on the more benign end of things. Huge.
Yeah. And when you were kind of fleshing out the story, did you draw on any like true crime incidents or historical context to build the cults within this world?
Yeah, I spent some time in the media here in Arizona right around towards the end of my college career, after my college career. So for about 5 years, I was a newspaper reporter, reporting for the Arizona Republic and a smaller paper here in Phoenix. Then after college, moving to Texas and writing for an alternative news weekly there. So in my reporting in Arizona, there were actual cults that I did pull from. I've never named them in particular because I just don't want to get in trouble. But there are certainly elements of my time in the media reporting on activity here combined with personal experience. So that's what the story is. Yeah.
Is it, you talk about being more relevant now, and I agree. Is there another story here, do you think? Would you ever approach like, oh, maybe a sequel, maybe a continuation? Yeah,
so again, on a whim through my same contact at MVD, I was telling him that I want to, do something else. And he had thrown it out there. He said, they would definitely be interested in Bryan Loves You Part 2, because he was so affirmative about that it gave me a little bit more confidence than I had than I would think on my own, because the reaction to it's been so mixed. I mean, I don't look at reviews anymore, but back when I did the first time, I did. It fucked me up, but I saw some reviews that said this is like iconic and this should be included in religious studies. To others that said this is the worst thing I fucking seen, which is a little hyperbolic, because you look at any movie, somebody says this is the worst thing I've ever seen, and I'm thinking, really? Like, so yeah, So I have a little bit of mixed emotions about it, because the reception was so mixed, and part of me thinks I don't ever want to deal with it again. I mean, I'm proud of what I did, and I don't care what anybody says about it. I like what I created, and I know other people have found it, and that's good enough for me. So I've always thought if like 10 people like it, fine, don't care.
The beauty of a movie like that too is that sometimes it's actually good to have a divisive movie, because it opens up a conversation piece. And it yeah. I mean, I've been trying to get Ryan here to watch Showgirls for years, and he won't even do it. Complete dick about it, but
you did it. Season 3, first mention of Showgirls, it happened.
Do it.
Is he going to keep doing this until you watch the thing?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to have to watch it at some point.
It's become this weird reoccurring bit. Like, if there was a drinking game for the show, it would be anytime Jimmy mentioned Showgirls. So who am I to deny working that in by watching it, right?
To be fair, like I send him, I would go on a terror and send him just GIF after GIF after GIF after GIF of Showgirls, like anything Funny. I could find.
I love GIFs.
Jimmy's a monster.
Are you a GIF master as well? We should go back and forth on that.
You don't know what you just called down.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Breakin'. I mean, I've got Randy Macho Man Savage. I got a lot in my bag.
I got Showgirls.
I generally respond with some sort of Christopher Lloyd, personally.
Yeah,
Back to the Future Christopher Lloyd, Cuckoo's Nest Chris. Which one?
Any of the above. I will find the most like random face he's making and send it in response to Jimmy's Showgirls gifts. Like generally Addams Family is doing this thing. But I did want to double back a little bit. Like, if you were to kind of revisit this world, where do you see the story going?
I've just been recently thinking about this. I have a really good idea. I don't know how much I want to share because I'm still in the outline phase. But I thought about that. Like, okay, so how does that work? I mean, I know the other story well. I left it intentionally nebulous where there wasn't a decisive ending. Mm-hmm. And my thought was, okay, I'll say this, but this is all I'll say. But and I love this because I know I can run with it. I know I can instill modern day elements into the Bryans, the things I want to say. So I could do another movie completely separate and be like kind of like a Pod People type movie, which I'm fascinated by. But I can insert all those elements into the sequel to this, having a head start because it does have some kind of base and people on the business side who have already told me, yes, there would be interest there. We may even be able to get you a budget, which I mean, small, But I would never even count on that. I've never had that. I've always culled together all my money myself. So if anybody were to give me something, I'd be very receptive to it. But again, with that comes, you have to cede control in certain ways. But that's a conversation for the future. Getting to the original point, the story itself, I thought of my character somewhere else living his life, and then somebody finds him and says, I got to take you back. And my character being very similar to Luke on the mountain in the recent Star Wars, very similar to that, not ripping that off, but I'm like, wait a minute, why does that seem familiar? Because that thing's been memed to death, but very similar to that, where my character is somewhere else, probably a teacher, because I actually had that profession. So I generally take from real life whenever I write anything, because I like to be credible with what I'm talking about, like the mental hospital scenes and that, lived through all that. So like was actually in those situations. But so I would be a teacher probably, or another job that I had. And somebody comes back and says, you got to come back to like whatever, Arizona. I'm not going back. And then, he goes back and then he sees what's happening. The masks look different. It's shot in a conventional style. I already have ideas for what the Bryans are going to do, like different, way more involved. Our world is almost like a mesh of humanity and technology now. So it would definitely incorporate that. So like, yeah, the wheels are definitely spinning on it. I don't want to get too specific, but I have really good ideas on what the Bryans would be now. So in the original movie, it was mainly ideology and their dress and, their face coverings, masks. And now it's going to be more ingrained in them. I guess I could just say that. And I can make the masks more modern and different. And I mean, if you compare like, let's say Batman over the years, there you go.
There he is.
They would have to be inspired by the original design. And incidentally, Jason Kisvarde, who designed those masks, is now a superstar production designer. And this was his first gig as a production designer. There are a lot of interesting things about both my movies, actually. Very weird. But Jason Kisvarde, if you ever look up his credits, he's an award-winning, very popular production designer. Bryan Loves You was his first gig. And I met Jason through the music scene. So my first movie, Takeout, had a lot of indie rock in it from LA. And I was in a bunch of those circles. And one of the bands, Midway, I really liked, their drummer was Jason. And Jason was trying to make it with Midway to break and be a touring band. And he was a good drummer. He was actually teaching me drums for a while. But he had always made models and stuff. And like on social media, you would see things like, A-Team thing that he made, or like classic cars that he saw at auction, or he had that in him. He was like a model guy and a prop guy before he was officially a production designer. So, all my movies, I just like because they're so low budget, you have to go with people that because there's a trust there. They will do you favors and they have to believe in you. Because if you go to most people and you try and pay them scale on a movie that costs $25,000 like Bryan, no, just not going to happen. You're going to get the runaround from their reps for years, but they're never going to show up. So anyway, so Jason, I still have all these emails from back in the day. I still have his receipts from all the stuff that he bought. Because we're so low budget, he would he would tape the receipts to the paper and photocopy and stuff. So, but yeah, I have all the concept designs from the mask that he did. But now, I probably couldn't even afford him. But he's a super nice, sweet guy. And he's a nice guy. He's a real dude. He's insanely talented. He's incredibly resourceful. So if anybody needs a production designer, Jason Kisvarde, not that he doesn't need me to say that. He's too busy already. And we Zoomed during the shutdown in 2020 or whatever. Mm-hmm. I caught up with a lot of old friends because everybody was kind of stationed at home. Yeah. And he had told me not to speak for him, I don't believe in doing that, but this is just conversational. He had said, I'm at a point now where I can just kind of do the jobs I want. I can turn things down. When good for him, because he was extremely talented. But a little bit of a side story on the masks. That's where they came from.
That's fantastic.
That was actually one of my questions was about the mask. So
way ahead of me. The mask. Now I believe, and we're running out. We only have a few more minutes, but I do want to say you're giving one away, and I want to tell people how they can win. They can have one of these on their
yeah. So there's literally two left. I'm keeping one. And there's one, and I figured I might as well give it away to help maybe promote the movie a little bit more and separate it from the pack. Because if you look at release schedules, there are 10, 20 movies every single week. So, the odds that anybody's going to pay attention to yours are slim to begin with, unless it's like Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, whatever, like top 10 actors or actresses. So anyway, we're giving away a very significant and real and valuable piece of it to whomever, randomly drawn. And the way that you do it is go to YouTube, type in my name, Seth Landau, go to my channel, and there it is. The featured video on my channel is how you enter. You just basically comment on the video that is the giveaway video. And by the end of the year, we're going to randomly pick somebody, ask for their address, send it to them.
Well, that's really,
just that easy.
Oh my gosh. I would do it if I didn't already have one. Okay, seriously.
And if you want.
I don't, so there you go.
Everybody has equal chance to win.
There were two people that showed up in your movie that I wanted to address, because I was very excited to see Tony Todd and Lloyd Kaufman show up. So I want to know, like, the process of bringing them on board, and if you have any stories of working with them.
Actually, Daniel Schweiger, to bring this back to the beginning. Dan Schweiger is one of my best friends in LA and in life. Like I said, I met him we were in a stage sketch show together. We actually played bumbling, petty thieves in a sketch together. And that's how we kind of got our start. And we just stayed in touch. So over the years, I met George Wendt through Dan Schweiger because, and I'm not to sidetrack, but Stuart Gordon was a friend of Dan Schweiger, and I was around them at parties. And over the years, Stuart had seen me a couple of times. And when it was time to make my first movie, Takeout, through Dan and Stuart, I got to George. I drove to George's house myself and hand delivered my script to him in Sherman Oaks, and he had a pass. But when Bryan was made, I went back to him and I said, hey, doing another one, would you be in this one? So through Dan Schweiger and via Stuart Gordon, that's how George came about. Tony Todd, similar story. Dan had a connection with one of Tony's circle. I believe it was one of his reps. And I reached out with an offer, and several of Tony's friends were already in the movie. So Dan Roebuck is a friend of Tony Todd. Dan Roebuck, again, I met through Dan Schweiger. Dan Roebuck was in my first movie, Takeout, so he was able to vouch for me. Yes, I've been on one of his sets. It's a good time. If you like the script, go for it. And a few other of Tony's friends were there. So it was a combination of having a personal connection to his inner circle, and his friends were already part of the cast. And I'm imagining that he liked the script, or at least that's what he told me. He said it reminded him of those like kind of old time horror movies where somebody would introduce the movie in the way that he introduces Bryan Loves You. Yeah. And so that's how it came about. He was great to work with. Okay, so if you want to talk about how not a prima donna Tony Todd is, we had our cast staying at this one certain hotel in the Phoenix area that was really nice. It was super hip. It was retro. It's called the Hotel Valley Ho, and it's like that, like kind of what genre? Like not 50s, but just like almost like a disco era throwback, super like retro modern hotel. So whatever the case, everybody loved it. And so we made sure that our star actors had like the nicest room. And when I went to see Tony, when I first met him, when he got to the hotel, he had like a standard room. And when I walked in, it must have shown on my face, like, because he looked at me like, what? I'm like, I'm so sorry. You're supposed to have like a whatever room's like the supreme room, you know? And he's like, he didn't care. He's like, oh, I thought you thought I was like, like dirty or something. Like his room was messy. I'm like, no. Like you should have a much nicer room. He didn't even upgrade. He's like, his son was with him. He's like, yeah, my son would just be on that side. So if you could work that out, great. And we did it. Yeah, he was great to work with. George and Tony both. Those were probably our more known actors, although we have plenty, more than I deserve. But both of them in particular, I remember just being just like any other actor I've ever worked with. But the difference is they're super famous and they don't have to do anything they don't want to do. So yeah, working with him, that's how it came about. And that was the experience. He was one of those actors that is not only talented, but he's just like a good person who cares. And he's not a prima donna, which is like super rare in like the talented entertainment realm, I think.
Yeah,
he's an amazing guy.
And Lloyd, actually, Tiffany was gracious enough. So Tiffany and I had worked on Ted Bundy together. And I ran into Tiffany at a cafe in Studio City. And I said, hey, and then we connected that way. She was sitting at a table over here. We were both on set together several years earlier when I had seen her. I had like a 5 and under. She had no idea who I was. But when I had Bryan, and I was prepping it, That's how that came about. And so she was gracious enough to bring in both Brink and Lloyd. She said, I know these people, I'm close to them, send them the script, and if they're available, they might do it. Nothing was for certain. I mean, when you're an unknown, as I am, as I will probably be for a really long time, people have to see that, number one, you can pull off a set. Number two, your script is good, because an actor is not going to take a role if they don't believe in the story and in the character. And I think Tiffany, something I was really proud of with Tiffany is that, I mean, she's had a lot of great roles in her career, but I love the fact that she had a substantive, serious role in this. And I know she's a scream queen and she's great at being a scream queen, but this was not that at all.
No
sexiness at all about her character. In fact, I said you were the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So Lloyd was the Tiffany.
Nice. Yeah. Well, dude, I'm so glad. I mean, you and I contacted each other throughout this past couple of years, and we've reconnected, and it's been nice. It's been really lovely, and I'm really happy we were able to start off the new season with you. Thank you. I
appreciate it.
Coming, but one of the things we like to finish the show up with is a little bit of a scary story, and you mentioned you have one.
Yeah. Okay. So
bring it.
Tell me if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the original version of The Grudge, Ju-on, is that right? And yes. I should know this because my wife is Japanese. I should have just asked her, but I wasn't planning on telling the story. But is that it? Is it Ju-on?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So I was watching, again, this is back in the day before streaming and all that. So people had like Showtime, HBO, like hardwire cable was a different thing. So I was living alone at the time. I was single. I was living alone, and I would typically watch a lot of movies at night by myself. Like that was my thing. I'd have like popcorn and like peanut M&Ms and like whatever. And I'd consume a lot of movies. So right around the Halloween season, so we shot Bryan in the summer. Yeah. So a couple months after that, around Halloween time, they were always movie marathons. And to me, I would put Ju-on in like top 5 movies that scared me. And I was really just disconcerted watching the thing. So I'm watching it by myself in my apartment in LA, lights off. And then my phone rings and it says Candyman, which is how Tony was in my phone. And I pick it up. It was a weird timing because it was during a very tense time during Ju-on, alone in my apartment in the dark, being scared to death. Candyman shows up on my phone and I pick it up and I hear breathing. And I realized he had like butt dialed me, but he was walking somewhere at night. So I'm hearing the Candyman walking with it, almost like that scene with Helen in the parking garage where you just hear his footsteps. The only thing that was missing was like Seth, as opposed to Helen, because it was like him breathing, walking alone with his feet clomping on leaves on pavement. And it was just the worst time to have the Candyman call my phone while I was watching that movie around Halloween. I don't think I've ever told him that, but.
That's kind of amazing. I love it.
That's excellent.
Yeah, true story. It was not made up. That is a true story. Talk about timing.
Well, dude, Seth, so for those of you who have not seen the movie, have not had a chance to, it is available as we speak. You can pick this up. You can go to your website. We'll post the information here. Seth, thank you for joining us. It's been all obviously you're a dear friend. I'm glad to connect with you again.
Of course,
I'm glad everything's going well for you, man. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. I know I'm probably like the least famous guest on the show to date, but I appreciate the belief not only of having me on this show, but of James, of you being in the commentary, which incidentally is also on that one, the new DVD as well. That was MVD's call. They said, well, let's just take the old one from the Anchor Bay and put it on this one. So not only is your quote on the front, which I appreciate, but you are a featured player in the disc extras as well, which could not make me happier. And I also wanted to say that, on the eve of this movie coming out, like I cannot think of a better person to be talking to or a better show to be on, because it's been a rigorous time from the first release to the past year of getting my old tapes together and reconnecting with all the actors and doing interviews. And it's basically been like another year of work. So on the eve of the next release, hopefully something good happens with this one. There's not a better place. So I appreciate it.
If you feel faint, or nauseous while watching these events, please look away from the screen. These are the video musings of a highly disturbed young man.
Oh, that's one of my neighbors. Hey, how's it going? All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you want to learn about Bryan?
I don't think you understand what's going on, Jonathan.
Bryan, we praise your name. We will find the devil Tansy and avenge Bryan.
I know you want answers, Jonathan. You stumbled upon something very big and very powerful.
I was gonna hear about this early, Doctor.
If it's not there, Bryan will make it all better.
The town is under control.
Get out of here.